here with us today. Let's give this man a round of applause. And, just on behalf of JPMorgan Chase, we are thankful for Steph's presence because, he has a high profile. He's helping us to promote the message of growing black wealth. We have a lot of resources out there to help people get on that path. And that's the only way we're going to close the racial wealth gap. So, Steph, really appreciate you. So to that end, why is the issue of growing black wealth so important to you? And what inspires you to get involved in this effort?
I mean, look at this room right here, right? This is, you gotta give yourself some love for being here, for investing in yourself, for being visionaries, and even hearing that chant in the back. Like, that is the energy we need across every sector, across every part of this country, and understanding that the opportunity is there. I'm here to help create awareness. Obviously I'm no financial expert, but I know that, with the right awareness, the right programs, the right support, the right just message that's going out, especially to our kids at a younger age, that we can attack some of these, horrible stats in the racial wealth gap that still exists. But I can feel the tide is changing. And I know from my standpoint, the success that basketball has brought me on and off the court, and the doors that have been open, and the access to certain networks, like, my job is to continue to try to create opportunity, with every room that I get to walk into, and every seat that I have at the table, so that that wave continues for the next generation. So I know that's why we're all in here, and we're all a part of that growth and that wave. And I feel like I'm just trying to do my small part as a part of it.
I appreciate you, man. And so in addition to your responsibilities with the NBA, you've got Under Armour, you've got Callaway Golf, you've got myriad endorsements. You are also the anchor for a venture capital firm called Penny Jar Capital. Now, if you're not familiar with Penny Jar Capital, they invest in the tech space and they help companies to address their most pressing needs. So Steph, what led you in this direction? What drove you into becoming a venture capital investor?
Well, first, I'm from North Carolina, and when I first came out here to the Bay back in 2009, you understand, like, this is the tech capital of the world. There's so much innovation here. Obviously the venture space is hot, and it's, going to games even, you realize who's sitting in courtside, who's sitting, in the stands, and you start to get an understanding of these are people that are investing in the now and the future. And for me to have the ability to work with my co-founders at Penny Jar and understand, like, I get to learn from different founders and how they solve problems, how they build teams, how they're trying to create solutions. The ability to leverage, capital in a way for me that's going to help, keep founders accountable on how they're, trying to create representation at the C-suite level as they build their leadership teams out. Obviously investing in black and brown founders and minorities that deserve the opportunity and the access to the capital that's being thrown out everywhere. So for us to develop a discipline around that is something that really, intrigued my curiosity. And we're about 4 years in building our portfolio, and we want our portfolio to look like what the world looks like, right? And so we feel like that's the journey that we're on, and obviously holding different companies and founders accountable to that process with us. It's great to be, in a position where you can move the needle in that regard, and that can be something that eventually, like, everybody in the venture space wants to make money and wants to have a return on that. For me, the aspirational part of that is to be able to continue to do the great things that my foundation has been able to do, Eat, Learn, Play, that we support 99% of our work here in Oakland, California, and my adopted home right in my backyard. So, to be able to create sustainability for our foundation too, for the long run, because we're trying to scale up our work as we go along too. So those are the reasons why I've been curious and excited about the venture part of it, and learning along the way, for sure.
Now, as an NBA player, you're not just unique in terms of how you play the game. Like, nobody was shooting three-pointers from half court until Steph started doing it. Like, you really are a game changer. But the other piece is, you're a game changer in terms of the issues that you decide to take a stand on. I don't hear, and this is no shade, but I don't hear many NBA players talking about pay equity for women women, or specifically pay equity for black women. What inspired you to get involved in this issue?
I mean, my dad obviously gets a lot of love for me being a basketball dad, or NBA kid, growing up and him playing 6 years in the league. But I was raised by some very, very strong black women that instilled some amazing life principles in me and gave me so much support and love. And obviously, we get to this point where you understand what the pay equity issues are, and the fact that I have been in a position to be able to partner with some amazing companies that are trying to solve this issue and put it on the main stage. I'm just doing my part, man. I don't even look for a pat on the back, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. Those are the issues that we're supposed to be solving. Even working with a company called Syndio, that's what they do. They're trying to attack the gender pay equity gap and creating metrics that companies can ascribe to solve the problems internally. And I know the things we're doing with Chase, it's important for that to be talked about and not be taken for granted that it's just not the way it's supposed to be, that we can do something about it, no matter how long it takes, right? Because we're still dealing with generational, disadvantages that our community has been dealing with forever. So it's part of that process, and I have to be active in that. And so it's nothing to, again, get a pat on the back for. It's what we're supposed to be doing.
But look, as the father of 2 daughters who are back east in New Jersey, I thank you for your efforts with pay equity. They're going to hopefully benefit from that work. The other piece is, so I checked out your documentary, Underrated, and one of the things, it's great documentary. And in the documentary stuff, you're very transparent about the impact that your mother had on you. She was a driving force, and you've gone back to Davidson and finishing your education. And in that vein, how did your mom and your dad influence you when it came to managing your personal finances? And how did they influence the way you're talking to your children about personal finances?
Yeah, I mean, my mom she's a lifelong educator. She founded a Montessori school back in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I went there for almost 7 years. And so, like you said, the influence that she's had on me, from just a perspective of, one, setting your priorities, understanding that we're all uniquely made and we all have something to offer this world, but for us, me and my brother and my sister, to find our own identity, knowing that, again, my dad cast a large shadow as an NBA player. And the first lesson they told me from a financial perspective was that's their money. that's not mine. In terms of the responsibility of working for everything that you get and protecting whatever you get at all costs. Obviously, understanding the disciplines around saving even at an early age, understanding what that meant, and I think that's kind of bled into everything that I've done. Obviously, I'm blessed, man. I get to play basketball for a living. Like, I never take it for granted what comes with that, but the perspective that was instilled in me early in terms of being able to take care of your family, provide, be responsible with the blessing that you have in your life, and even being generous and selfless in terms of how you kind of can look out for others along the way, whatever that means. If that's just one person, a family, or trying to create opportunity within the business sector, the world, like whatever it is, you always have a perspective of how can I take the blessings that I've got and pass that on in some way, shape, or form. And so they instilled that into me early. Never knew that this would be the scale of what I would be able to do it at, but I'm forever grateful that they set me off on that path early, even with the threat of, because my dad played in the NBA and we really, I want to talk about his finances, but in terms of being able to have that right perspective and develop that early, that for me has been a key to success with the blessings that come about.
And I know your dad was a great model. It shows just knowing who he was, but also thinking about the era in which your dad played. I can think about a lot of players from that era, max salary players from back then. Even some guys that were more recent that unfortunately they blew through their money. They didn't necessarily have the types of influences that you had in terms of managing money. So what did you learn from players who have gone broke, players who've been in the NBA and they overextended themselves, they took care of too many people. How did you learn from some of the mistakes that you've seen other players make?
I think investing in your own financial literacy, it's not too late to shape that perspective. I think we all know, especially the position that some of these young kids are thrown into, when they come into the NBA, speaking about that, like they're not prepared to manage that type of money coming in. They don't understand exactly how to sustain that level of wealth, I should say, but also just the daily habits that you need to form on making the right decisions. Obviously understanding how taxes work, understanding how compounded interest work, understanding how the banking system works. Like, you take those things for granted. The financial literacy aspect of it, there's so many programs that are out there and available. Shout out to our Players Association, who's done an amazing job of being very active and educating the incoming rookie class and even the vets who have questions to ask. And to seek out those programs, seek out those resources. Don't feel like you have too big of an ego to ask dumb questions. Like, there's always, or I should say, no questions dumb, but to ask questions that you might think are dumb and think, you should know it, but you kind of, take it for granted. Like, all those things matter, no matter what industry you're in, what your job is, whatever your background is. And so we've had a lot of examples of guys that have struggled in that department. They've been pretty open and honest about it and have shared their stories. And I think it's part of the awareness that needs to happen on how we all manage our finances and find ways to create generational wealth at whatever level we're talking about.
And I'm glad that you ended that answer on that note, talking about generational wealth, because a lot of what we're trying to do here is educate people on how to plan beyond their lifetime for their personal finances. That's like the ultimate act of hope, planning beyond the end of your life for your heirs to benefit. And when we look at the data for wealthy families, people that have substantial funds, the data shows that for 70% of wealthy families, most of them will lose all of their wealth by the second generation. It's gone by the second generation. And then for 90% of wealthy families, it's gone by the third generation. It dissipates. So with this in mind, how are you teaching your children at this tender stage of their lives, your very young children, how are you teaching them about wealth at this point?
I think just opening up that chain of communication, right? Like, it's from a generational aspect, those are the conversations we need to have sitting down at the dinner table, like, talking about in the appropriate time as your kids develop, like, what does it mean to save? Like, we talked about how does taxes work, trying to understand the systems that are in place so that when they come up and it's time for them to make decisions, they're in a position where they can allow the systems to work for them instead of the other way around, and just have an understanding of what financial responsibility and literacy means. Like, I don't think you can start too early. Like, I mean, you can go from the piggy bank all the way up to getting their first bank account, but it's just about having those constant conversations and being in constant communication with the kids on what you've learned and what you know, and allowing them to ask questions. Like, don't take for granted the impact that you have on that. And even if for me, like, I might not know everything about a question they ask, but I know I can go finance and have a resource and allow them to be comfortable to come to me and Aisha if they have anything that's of concern on that front. Because it's a lot, right? It's a lot that we all have been through that in some way, shape, or form, and becoming adults and coming into the real world and having to take care of yourself and all that. Like, being in communication with our kids as early as possible is the most important thing. Because everybody's journey is going to be a little different. We all know that.
Now, on that note, a little thought experiment for you. Let's fast forward to 20 to 25 years from now. Your children, they're getting grown, they're starting their lives. How do you envision talking to them then? They're already fully formed adults about not only gaining inheritance, but adding their own to it, growing the family wealth. How do you envision that conversation 20, 25 years from now?
I mean, hopefully it's pretty seamless. I mean, in terms of the discipline that we're creating now, I think at that point you'll be thinking in terms of like what's your will look like and your estate planning and things like that. That hopefully they'll be ready and responsible for it, because hopefully you'll be able to pass
get them to listen? Because they're going to be like,
that's
yes,
hard.
Dad, you know.
I would say, usually it might have to come from somebody else. The kids are a little funny on that.
I struggle with that. It's 1 year. If Dad says it, I ain't listening. I don't care what it is. So good luck with that.
Absolutely.
We're being very transparent about connecting people to tools and resources. So as I said earlier, put us to the test, y'all. Put us to the test. How important is the concept of generational wealth for Black people, right? In many respects, we're starting at ground zero. How important is it that we just get grounded in that concept, generational wealth?
It's big. It's about stability. It's about, rectifying 400 years of disadvantage, system, designed to disadvantage Black people around the country, and for us in terms of, again, rerouting systems, redefining systems so that they work for us instead of against us. That's the biggest thing. And you look at like home ownership, the banking system, access to credit, like all those things that have really been hurdles for a lot of the Black community over the course of generations. Like for us to be able to build stability, allow money to work for us, and find different ways for us to be empowered in that space. And like I said, when I walked in here, like have more rooms like this. Like this is the best thing in the world for us to continue to position ourselves in a space of changing the narrative, and all being on that journey together. So I think it's important to reshape the narrative. It's not just about the here and now. It's about how we leave this world and our families in better places than what we found. And it's possible, right? That's the inspiration that we need to have. It is possible. I know we're all committed to that.
I really appreciate that, man. And it leads into my next question, which is that, once you've achieved a certain level, why is it important that we reinvest in our community, right? And you've talked about the work that you've done with Eat, Learn, Play. You have the Underrated initiative, which we'd love to learn more about. Why is it critical that we also adopt not just I got to get mine for me and my family, but a community-driven mindset when it comes to wealth as well?
Because who else is going to do it? That's who else is going to do it? Who else is going to put the money to the test and again, creating opportunity and equity in every space that we show up in? Like, leadership in that space is huge, because I don't think you're ever looking out for handouts or expect anything to change on its own. So, like I said, I'm in a position where I understand exactly where I can move the needle and can find ways to bring people along that journey with me. We talked about my foundation, the Underrated brand, where we're creating opportunity within sports for both young men and women. Right now, just in basketball and in golf, but using those as vehicles to understand, like, okay, my investment in their experience and the resources afforded to them. We might have a couple that go professional in either sport, but the access to the business world, the access to different roles within each of these categories, and getting them a vision of what's possible for them in the future. That's where the real benefit is for them to think, okay, I could be the CFO of this, I could be the CEO of this, I could be in this position, and really connecting those dots. And so we're using sports as a part of that, and obviously that investment should hopefully reap a benefit for the next generation. And so all those different opportunities are huge. And like I said, if you have the opportunity to do that, you have to do it. It's the way that things can truly change for the next generation.
So the documentary, I watched it a couple weeks ago, and I really connected with it. Anybody who's ever felt overlooked, underrated, not given a chance, this is something that we can relate to. Steph is a superstar, but it's such a humanistic and just down-to-earth portrait. So definitely check the documentary. Now, you could have chosen any number of topics for that documentary. The rivalry with LeBron. You could have chosen to get into the 4 straight trips to the finals. The Kevin Durant season, that team, I think they would beat the 96 Bulls, I'm sorry. But instead of focusing on all of that in the documentary, you decided to focus on your time at Davidson. What inspired you to lean in on that formative period in your life?
I think the biggest inspiration behind it was like, we all start from somewhere. And when I went back to think about it, so 2008 was our Elite 8 run, where we made it to the Elite 8, lost to Kansas. And Davidson College, a small 1,800 student liberal arts school.
We never heard of it before that tournament.
Exactly. And especially, I'm going into my 15th year in the NBA, which is crazy. If you think about all that's happening along that journey, like, that's what most people see now, right? To your point around the finals series and the MVP awards and just like the finished, polished product of the guy and the player that I am now, drastically different from where I started, and trying to connect that story arc from the origin story of where I started, the confidence I had to develop in myself, me being reliant on work ethic, sense of community that has been a part of that journey with me, and trying to highlight the different influences that I've had in my life, and give them their roses and flowers, and all that they've done for me. But for most people who see me now, and see me play and feel connected to that, kind of opened up the veil a little bit with something. Even when I look back at some of the old footage and the way that some old coaches and family members talk about me when I was an 8, 9, 10-year-old to now, I just wanted to give kids hope that really kids, but really anybody in terms of you feel undervalued, overlooked, underrated, at whatever it is, with the right determination, the right community around you, the right belief in self, and patience and perseverance, like that anything is possible. And I had the opportunity to connect those visuals, and it was even some of the, like I said, even some of the footage I look back, it was bad. It was turnovers all over the place. It looked the part and the whole deal, but I came from somewhere, I worked, I've been blessed the whole way, and to be able to tell that story was impactful, and it aligned with when I finished my degree from Davidson last year, and to have that kind of full circle arc, finishing one obviously with the championship last year was pretty special.
Now take us back to when you were in high school, right? So thinking about the documentary, you were in high school, they said you were too skinny, you're too small, you did not get recruited by a single major Division I program, they're lost. But this never stopped you from pursuing the dream, right? Talk to us about what inspired you to put in that work. Like, you put in that time. When they told you couldn't do it, you put in that time on the court, in the gym. Like, what kept you going, despite the naysayers?
I mean, if you see the documentary, my mom has like my favorite quote in the documentary around, with all the critics, all the naysayers, everybody kind of telling you what you aren't. She was like, it's not so much for him about proving other people wrong, it's about proving himself right. And that in mind was like Coach Bob Calif, who is the head coach at Davidson College, it's a great story about seeing somebody for who they are, right, in that moment, and connecting with that and truly believing in it. And he was so with, I didn't need to change anything about myself or who I was. It was just doubling down on that and allowing his coaching and allowing the experience and allowing going somewhere where it was the right fit and the right place for me, that it would all turn into something meaningful. And I obviously stretch it way beyond my imagination, but to go throughout the process of proving myself right, that I was worthy enough with the work that I put in, and that's how I approach everything in life, on and off the court. And so shout out to my mom for giving me that confidence, no matter what anybody else says. I can block out all the distractions and all the noise.
Now, we got time for one more question, just 1 minute left, and I love who we're going to end this at, because we got a lot of dreamers that are out there, a lot of entrepreneurs that are trying to grow their own businesses, they're thinking big about their lives, but all of us deal with self-doubt. And for a lot of people, that self-doubt, it kills off dreams in their infancy. It kills them in the crib. How did you overcome self-doubt on a personal level during your journey?
Well, the first thing I would say is that that's a human experience. I still deal with that to this day, where no matter what the success or accomplishment accomplishments are, sometimes the negative self-talk comes in and creeps in, you know, the self-doubt creeps in, the imposter syndrome creeps in. Like, that's a part of your human experience, and I still, you know, battle with it, but it's a commitment to the process of what you're doing, right? Everybody's kind of results-based in terms of how they, you know, grade themselves and what they put into it, and that's where you rob yourself of, you know, the opportunity to achieve your best self and achieve your full potential by, you know, skipping the process and not being fully immersed in, you know, the inspiration or the energy behind, you know, the why you started what you started. So find your why first, but commit to the process, commit to the daily grind of it, commit to positive self-talk, and the results will come. When they come, who knows? But the process is, and the journey is everything. And I don't want it to sound too cliche, but even before, you know, you see the championships and the MVPs, like the journey and the work that goes in is where you learn so much about yourself. And I wouldn't trade any of that for anything in the world. Who knows when, you know, the success would happen, but yeah, that's the best way to approach it. And to not think that because I have a little self-doubt that I'm doing something wrong or that I'm on the wrong path. Everybody deals with it. Acknowledge it, embrace it, but flip it on its head and enjoy the ride.
Steph, thank you, brother. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen,
Thank you for having me.
Everybody stand up because Steph's going to take a photo.